good afternoon, or whatever time. Again, I do every time I started. I always, who knows? Jared here, jaredpoland.com. So I get asked often about my framing or pre-visualization, how I, do all this in the camera, what I look for. Um, to me, the most important thing you can do when you walk into a situation, or even before you get there, is pre-visualize how you're going to capture something. How do you want to frame it? What lens do you want to use? What will your starting settings be? These are the things you want to know or think about before you get into a situation. I walk around all day and I see images. I go, if I'm seeing a car, if I'm on the street, anywhere, it's just, if I was to shoot this, this is what I would do. And all these things run through my head all day long. How would I shoot this? How would I shoot that? What lens would I use? What settings would I use? And something that was given to me back in college, first day of school, by Marcia, one of my teachers, was a slide, an empty slide holder, because it's a 2:3 ratio, full frame, or what a DX, doesn't matter. It's the same idea. And you just walk around, look through the world, through what a picture would look like. You move it in, that's how you would zoom it, vertical, just see the world through this. And it gets you to think about your frame. You could make it out of a piece of paper. It doesn't really matter. You always want to see what you're shooting, because if you just look at it, that's why they recommend you look through the camera when you're going to shoot something, to see if the framing is right. Because when you just look at it without the camera, you may not be seeing the angle that the camera is picking up. So, what do I do? Let's walk through what I look for when it's time to shoot a picture. Well, first off, I don't use glasses. I can't shoot with glasses on. I just can't. I like to put my eye really deep into the camera. I like to be able to see everything. And with glasses, I just can't see the 100% of the frame. So when I'm looking at a subject, say it's, we'll say a portrait, for example, or a person, just anywhere. What am I looking for? If it's going to be, vertical or horizontal, what lens I'm using. Say we're using a 24-70, and it's going to be a horizontal, and I'm putting the person off to a side of an image. I'm using rule of thirds to throw them off to a side. I do that a lot because there's leading lines. If they're looking this way, it draws the person's eye in or out of the image, different things like that. So what am I looking for through the frame when I have a subject on one of the side? One, I'm looking to see, am I shooting them with the full body? Because it's important not to just cut things off just to cut things off. If you're going to shoot a picture and you're going to cut their feet off at their ankles, it doesn't feel right, and it looks terrible. So with something like that, either leave the feet in there or step closer or zoom closer to cut off at a different area. You have to be cognizant of what you're cutting off. If somebody's fingers are cut off at the tips off of a frame, well, why? That's something that needs to be there. If the fingers, if you're going to cut off one tip of a finger, I know sometimes when things are moving fast, things can happen, but these are things to think about. When you're composing, you want to look and see what you're cutting or what you're not cutting. I check my edges constantly. I'm always looking around the corners to see if something's either sticking out or sticking in or doesn't work. Where I need to recompose, if there's a merger in the background, that's if something's coming out of the top of somebody's head like this in the back and you don't want it there, well, what can you do to get around it? Well, you could move to one side or the other. You could move yourself up or down. I shoot at a lot of low angles. I like to shoot at low angles. It's just part of my style. So I'm always looking at the edges to see what's there. I'm looking to fill the frame as much as I can because, again, you know that I'm not a cropper. I don't crop after the fact. I want to get it right in the camera. Even with fast-moving subjects, I want to get it right. With sports, I want to get it right in the camera. I know that everybody crops in sports, and it is what it is, but I like to get it right for myself, me. So I have some notes here. I look at the background. I don't want to cut anything off. When I'm shooting a band, if I have the lead singer there and there's strong lights coming in from all over the place, and it's, interfering with the picture. It's coming through the camera. It's creating lens flare. What can you do? I like to use their head or their body to block the light. So I move to an angle, I move lower, and I'm moving to make sure that the light is perfectly behind their head, and so all you get is a nice glow coming out around them, so that you're not, getting all that lens flare. So that's another thing that I look for when I'm framing, is where the light source is coming from, and if I can utilize that to help make my image better. Symmetry. Yeah, symmetry, throwing things off to one side, off to the next. Don't always throw subject in the middle. Sometimes it works. If you're in a huge area, like when I shot Walt on stage in New York, he's right in the middle. But everything's symmetrical. He's in an awesome 7-story high auditorium, and it's awesome. So that works right in the middle. Rules are meant to be broken. Whatever works for you works. But, rule of thirds, you throw things off into the corners. It creates just a different look. So I'm looking for all of these things. I'm composing in the camera. I'm looking, I go, ooh, that doesn't work. And then if I shift this way just a little bit, boom. So you also have to work on your focus in there. If the subject isn't going to be moving, you've got your single focus where you can lock in on them and then recompose. Or if you've got multiple, 51 points like I have in the D3S, I'm pretty quick with the button back here. I'm always moving them independently. I'm selecting where I want to focus. So I got pretty quick with that, even in continuous mode, even with subjects that are moving. I just got very good at that. Lens choice is important when you're thinking about what you're shooting. Wide angles are great. A long time ago, I used to shoot everything tight. And then you get to the point where it's like, all right, whatever, that's just the subject. That's just a headshot. You're not showing the scene. So what's important when shooting wide angle, when you're visualizing it, is you want to get close. Because if you shoot a person and they're this big in the scene, it's meaningless if it's a person shot. I like to fill the frame still with the person, but even in a wide angle, it shows a ton of what's going on in and around the frame. So that's something else to look at. Fill the frame as much as you can, in my opinion. Watch how much headroom you have. Sometimes I leave extra headroom and things like that, and it's just second nature at this point. But this is really important, to see the world through the camera. Think about everything that you're shooting and how it could be different, or how if you went like this, the image could be different, or if you changed your lens. So when I'm shooting, I will rotate through 4, 5, 6 different lenses because there's different angles I want to capture. There's different things I'm going for. So instead of cropping later, shooting something wide and then cropping it tight and all of that later, I'm trying to do as many angles as I can in the camera when I'm shooting the subject. I'll go from a 14 to 24 to a 70 to 200 to a 24 to 70 to a 16 fisheye, because I want to give every angle that I can. So we started off with pre-visualization. Think about what you want to shoot before you shoot it. So when you get into that situation, it becomes second nature. You know your framing. You know what you want your settings to be. I know that when I walk into a concert, I'm looking at the lights that they have, and I'm going, okay, this is my starting point. I know I can get away with this, and I know I can do this. If it's really bright, I know what else I can do there. So it's a little bit, if this happens, you do this. If that happens, you do that. But if you start thinking about it before you get there, and you think about your framing, and you just, you think about it, you're going to start to get it right. And don't cut off fingers, and don't cut off feet, and don't cut off arms. Those are things to look for when you're framing in the camera. I always say it, if you're going to cut a finger off like this, well, that's not much. You could have just left the hand in there. It just, little things like that affect me. Or when you look at a big group shot and they cut off a couple of feet just at the bottom and there's this much headroom at the top. It's like, if you composed it slightly, if you noticed what was going on when you were looking through it and checking your frame. I mean, the edges are the most important thing. If you keep looking around there, you're going to see what you're cutting off and get it right. And it's just a simple recomposing of it, either taking a step forward, a step back, step to the left, step to the right, higher, lower, or zooming in or out. Those are the different options you have, and you'll be much happier with your pictures at that point. This is a long 10 minutes. I rambled and stuff. I hope it helps. But yeah, composition, framing in the camera. Think about this when you're walking around. Just, use this and see the world through what the camera, how the camera would see it, and shoot it that way. So any questions, Jared at jaredpoland.com.